Simpsons Hit and Run is possibly the greatest licensed game ever made, and it's a crime that it has not yet been remastered. It's still super fun to play today, and there's a huge cult following for it, including a highly competitive speedrun community. I've also seen some unofficial remasters pop up online, and all that leaves me wondering why. Why has this game not yet been remastered? It seems like a slam dunk, but there may be some unfortunate licensing issues which we'll get into in this video. I'm going to delve into various aspects of the game and discuss what I would like to see in a potential remaster, despite some practical issues perhaps. This includes things like tweaking the gameplay to fit a modern audience, as well as improvements to the audio and visual presentation. Game remasters are a phenomenal way to preserve the legacy of our childhoods for future generations. Those of us who grew up with these games also then get a chance to relive our memories and experience some deep nostalgia. If you're new here, please subscribe to this channel. We are extremely close to that coveted goal of 1,000 subscribers, and this is currently the best way that you can support me. And be sure to like the video as well to push it out to others and show our support for this awesome game. So without any further delay, let's get into why The Simpsons Hit and Run needs a remaster now. I played a lot of games based on licensed movies and TV shows as a kid. After all, I was the prime audience for things like Robots, Chicken Little, and Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion. However, Simpsons Hit and Run stands out above the rest in terms of its quality and viability today. Sure, the game is intended for a slightly older audience with its T rating, but hey, my parents were cool with it. Being a kid in this era and not being allowed to play Grand Theft Auto meant that The Simpsons Hit and Run was the closest thing I could get to that kind of action. Pair that with a bunch of references to familiar characters and episodes, and I was completely sold. So yeah, many people think that this game is a GTA clone, but that mindset could certainly lead you to disappointment in today's era. Yes, you drive around cars and complete missions while running away from the police occasionally. I certainly understand the resemblance, but it's important to remember that this game is not an official tie-in to the GTA franchise. We have 49 main missions and then oodles of side questing that can be done. We start off with an incredibly easy tutorial level. The loading screen even gives us a little self-aware fourth wall break. Sure, it's simple, but the first stage of Simpsons Hit and Run is ridiculously iconic and is burned into my memory. As a kid, you don't just blow through story missions, you drive around aimlessly and just explore Springfield. We have some cutscenes that are impossible to skip, so let's add a cutscene skip to our remaster wish list. Thankfully for some, it is possible to cheese a cutscene skip at the end of the stage, so thanks to the speedrun community for that one. The story for this game is whatever. There's mischief in Springfield, Bart gets kidnapped, and we find out it's aliens taking over the world with soda, or something like that. I wouldn't necessarily change it for a remaster, as I think that would be a bit jarring. It's corny, but it's charming. Whatever. I certainly don't play the game because of its gripping storyline. The driving is fun, the setting is iconic, and the nostalgia is strong. Our second level is in the more urbanized part of Springfield, and we play as Bart. This level's pretty easy, but there are definitely a lot more tighter turns and some missions with more complex objectives. Instead of just destroying one car, we destroy multiple cars at the same time. Shorter time limits also create a greater sense of challenge as we progress through the game. It's a decent stage and I enjoy the city atmosphere, but our next stage is my favorite. We get to play as Lisa after Bart gets kidnapped, and we're in a more coastal setting. That sunset is incredible, and I just really dig the overall look and feel of this area. We'll get more into the music later on as well, but I'll just note right now that yes, this stage absolutely has my favorite theme. So the game only has 3 main areas and then they're looped. You go through all of them twice and then the final area is the first one for a third time, but spooky. I'm honestly okay with it because it means we get 3 high quality stages instead of just 7 okay ones. However, in a potential remaster, maybe we could see an additional 4th area. This is The Simpsons after all. I mean, they certainly have a lot of source material. Also, the 7th level does kinda suck. Like I said, we're back in the same area as levels 1 and 4. Sure, we have the Halloween theme now, but what sucks is that half the stage is cut off to make the transport missions more challenging. As we get towards the end of the game, you can tell there's a bit of a fizzle. The first several missions had so much care put into them, but then once you revisit Lisa's stage as Bart, the missions can be completed really easily. I breezed through level 6, and honestly I don't remember a thing about it from previous playthroughs. The issue continues then to be apparent in the final stage, where most of the missions are just repeats of transporting waste from one place to another. They must have run out of time or budget, as the end of the game really evidently does suffer. In a remaster, I would consider fully revamping these missions. Think about something like the rework of the Triforce quest in Wind Waker HD. Instead of having 3 waste transport missions in a row at the end, just have 1, and then add in some new extra missions. We do have a fair amount of repetition in the main storyline. Modern players may get tired of picking up things that fall off trucks, destroying another truck, and then escaping a black van. It's difficult for me to suggest changing too many of the main missions entirely to create more variety. After all, we don't want to give returning players with expectations whiplash. That's where an additional area could really come in handy. Think of it then how, like the Ace Attorney games, added extra cases when they went from the GBA to the DS, while still retaining all the original cases. For Bart's second stage, I think just having a few extra objectives would be good. We go from something as difficult as Never Trust a Snake in level 5 to some very simplistic missions. Of course, the exception to this claim is Set to Kill. That one is pretty tough, but otherwise, the late game was definitely lacking. For me, the cream of the crop for Simpsons Hit and Run in terms of difficulty and quality really comes in stages 3, 4, and 5. The first 2 stages are a bit too easy, and then the last 2 really fall off in quality. Overall, the main gameplay of Simpsons Hit and Run starts off incredibly strong, but then does fall off a bit towards the end. A remaster could smooth out the quality and keep it as high as ever for the entire duration. So now let's take a look at some of the other objectives in the game. Outside of the main missions, we have a lot of side quests. Getting 100% in this game is quite the undertaking compared to just going for any percentage. You really get to learn the ins and outs of each area, finding gags, trading cards, and completing additional races. Honestly, I would not necessarily change any of this stuff in a remaster. I think it's got a nice hefty number of collectibles, but it's not overbearing. I'd rather go for 100% in this game than bother to get all the blue coins in Mario Sunshine. It's also very easy to ignore the additional tasks if you just want to get through the game. In that case, you don't even have to finish all the main missions to just see the end of the game. After failing or restarting a mission a certain number of times, you can just skip them. I would possibly advocate for removing the mission skip in a remaster. It's a bit wild to me that there's a mission skip in a game meant for a 13-year-old audience and not a 7-year-old audience. However, I know that this is an era of gaming where things started to become a lot easier. Ultimately, so much of the game could just be skipped right over, and something to address it in a remaster would be the difficulty. I can truly say there are only 2 hard missions in the game, at least of the main ones, and those are the 2 I mentioned earlier. I haven't played all the bonus missions, but perhaps a remaster could benefit from some additional difficulty settings. Maybe they could make new missions that are either required or optional and have them be significant challenges compared to what we have. I'm not sure exactly how to integrate something into the game like that without causing whiplash, but the game could certainly use a bit more of a challenge at times. A few other changes I would make in a remaster involve the controls. It's a bit hard to explain, but the driving controls kind of snap back to a neutral position when making turns. The momentum of the turn itself gets cut short, and it's awkward for sure. Also, the hit detection when killing things like the Wasp cameras can feel off. Addressing these minor but important details in the gameplay are crucial to make sure that the game is appealing to a modern audience. However, they better not change a thing about the physics engine in Simpsons Hit and Run, because some of the most fun to be had is by slamming cars into each other with the sole purpose of destruction and kicking your loved ones down the street. Some of the artificial intelligence, though, could certainly be improved or at least modified. You can catch some insane clips of enemy cars in this game without even doing anything to break it. It just feels like the AI is a bit much for these 6th generation consoles to handle at times, and I hope a modern release could easily iron out some of the wonky AI. The Simpsons Hit and Run has incredibly fun and addictive missions with plenty to do on the side. There are some areas where the gameplay could certainly be improved in a remaster. I know I just offered up a lot of criticism of the game, but don't forget, I absolutely love it. It's possibly even a sleeper pick for my top 10 games of all time. I'd say though the changes I've gone over are practically required for the remaster to have a positive reception. Not doing anything and just releasing the game with some minor graphical upgrades could alienate a lot of people who never played the original. You have to make the game viable in modern times while also keeping the things that make us nostalgic for it. And speaking of things that make us nostalgic for it, let's take a look at some of the audio and visuals of the game next. Some of the tracks in this game get stuck in my head for days, most notably the first stage's theme and the third stage's theme. That jazzy tune in Lisa's stage is seriously catchy, and it's without a doubt my favorite in the game. The first song is incredibly nostalgic and reminds me of spending hours just screwing around in Springfield, not necessarily focusing on story missions. This theme plays again when we revisit the area as Marge, and here's an opportunity to add some new music to a remaster. The original theme totally sounds like something that would play inside of Homer's tiny brain, but it does not fit Marge's character or driving around at night. Again, it could have been a memory limitation or a time limitation back then, so now that those excuses are no longer relevant, we will need some new tracks for a remaster. Honestly though, the song that plays during Wolves Stole My Pills could almost be viable for Marge's stage. It's probably a bit too fast and high energy, but that's a damn good theme. Bart's second stage, aka level 6, suffers from a similar issue. His catchy, albeit somewhat generic, rock track fits the urban setting of level 2 and his personality nicely. However, when we revisit the coastal area at night with him, I wish we had something different. It's not that his theme is bad by any means, like I said, it's very fitting of the character, but give us some extra tracks for our theoretical remaster. There are several songs that play during missions that are also great, however, I had to listen to most of those themes outside of the game since it's hard to really catch them while you're playing since you're very focused. And if they didn't want to record entirely new themes for Marge and for a second one for Bart, then they could just let some of these phenomenal songs that only play literally like one time in the game shine a little more, because there are just some absolute bangers in here that I had no idea were even in the game. Still, they certainly serve their purpose, and also the theme that plays during the hit and run sequence is an absolute slapper. Overall, there's so many great tracks in The Simpsons Hit and Run, and we will need to retain them for a remaster, but I would recommend doing some new recordings. Imagine if they got a new jazz ensemble to re-record Harbor Hustle, Lisa's theme, while still retaining the elements of the song that make it great. It would feel a bit odd if the game got a full graphical overhaul while all the music remained unchanged, so we will need some new recordings, and some entirely new tracks to fill in the gaps of the original. Speaking of graphical overhauls, the 3D character models are definitely a bit dated looking, especially when they use them in the cutscenes. It was cool at the time, trust me, but now looking back it's iffy. Again, impressive for the time, but it would have aged a lot better if they were just animated like the TV show. They could look to something like the aptly titled Simpsons game from the Xbox 360 generation for a remaster of the art style. That game has aged a lot better in terms of visuals than Hit and Run. For a GameCube game though, it doesn't look terrible by any means. Of course though, for modern times, the graphics need some big improvements. The colors are generally appealing in Hit and Run. I'll especially highlight Lisa's level with its cool sunset aesthetic. Pair that with the jazzy theme that I love, and yeah, it's just a great level. The first stage also has an appealing color palette and creates that atmosphere of a happy suburb that's about to have an alien invasion, or whatever. Much like Delfino Plaza, the levels in Simpsons Hit and Run feel like places I have actually been in real life, and it's a bit weird knowing that they don't truly exist. Of course, the graphical quality and polish is way less than something like Mario Sunshine, but as a kid I didn't give a damn about graphical polish. I felt like I was walking around Springfield and that's what mattered. In terms of audio outside of music, the game has a lot of voice lines, and I feel like these would drive modern players insane.
Please don't tell anybody I did this. Please come back. I'm so lonely.
Who's in at your service?
Human crickets.
Sweet forward momentum.
I am
Mademoiselle, mean, Vindaloo machine.
Thank goodness for seatbelts.
For me, they're just nostalgic, so I welcome them. However, my goodness, the characters never shut up in this game. I know you can turn it off, but that also mutes the other character interactions that we may want to hear. So I know there is an impressive number of voice lines in the original, but perhaps an even greater variety would be best for a remaster. I don't really care how they attack this issue, but just making it a bit less annoying for everyone is essential. Another small tweak then would be some additional audio and visual cues when completing side quests.
Sweet, sweet, obsessive collecting.
You don't feel too rewarded for doing these things other than checking that stat screen and seeing the numbers go up. However, it's a very minor issue, but it is something I would expect from a quality remaster. Overall, the audio and visual presentation of The Simpsons Hit and Run is incredibly solid for a licensed game of this era. Keeping the original greatness of the tracks while adding in new ones to remove some of the repetition will be a key element in this remaster. Hearing a new recording of Stage 1 or Stage 3's theme would absolutely be a dream come true. However, folks, it's time to get practical and talk about some potential challenges that we may run into logistically for ever getting this game a remaster. Okay, let's talk about one of the possible challenges to even allowing a remaster: Apu. In the game's 5th level, we are back in the downtown area at night and we play as Apu. Here's the thing, this character has mostly been taken out of the show. This video is in no way saying whether or not I agree with that decision, but I need to point out the fact. It's a big elephant in the room nowadays, and I would imagine there would be a decision around changing level 5 significantly. Even if this was not an issue of political correctness, having a now minor character be a playable one alongside the likes of Homer, Bart, Lisa, and Marge is a strange choice. They will pretty much have to change it at this point in a remaster. If they wanted to remove Apu, then there would be an opportunity for level 5 to be a new area with a different character. However, like I said, I'm not here to make that decision for the developers today. The next challenge comes in licensing. I don't know exactly who owns what these days, and I tend not to look too much into that. I'd rather live in my own little fantasy land where we all get to play game designer and make decisions about remastering ourselves, ignoring rights and all that other mumbo jumbo. However, let's get practical for a second. The game's Wikipedia article led me to believe that there is an issue with this game getting remastered. At the bottom of the development section it reads, "After release, Radical immediately began working on a sequel, but had to cancel it when Vivendi chose not to reobtain the Simpsons license." Yeah, so those logos that you see at the beginning are really important. Hearing Vivendi Universal Games' logo is as nostalgic as the game itself. Especially since they published numerous other games that I played as a kid. Well, they don't exist anymore, and it appears that they've been swallowed up by, oh god, Activision. Okay, yeah, we're doomed. This remaster is never happening. Radical Entertainment, the game's developer, has also been swallowed up by the evil empire, so yeah, we're doomed. But let's say a miracle happens, and we do get a remaster one day. This whole rant serves as my wish list for improvements to remake The Simpsons Hit and Run. I know my list is fairly lengthy, and going through it I realized how many things I truly asked for in this video. I don't necessarily expect a remaster to have every single thing I talked about. That would be incredible. This is the modern industry, and now that we know this is Activision, most likely, it's probably not going to be what I want it to be. But getting any semblance of a remaster for Simpsons Hit and Run would be an amazing feat. Again, don't get me wrong, I still love the original game, but a remaster is a perfect opportunity to make some much needed improvements for a modern audience and preserve the game's legacy. So what do you think of my suggestions? Do you have any you would make yourself based on things I maybe forgot to mention? Let me know in the comments, as I cannot wait to discuss this incredible game with you all. Did The Simpsons Hit and Run have such a large impact on your childhood as well? Well, that's why this game needs to be remastered now. Thanks for watching.